Yeah.
Here we go. We're live.
Oh,
Sandy,
there
how
we
are
go.
you?
Hi there.
Sandy, can you hear me?
We're good. How are you?
All right, I'm good. Michael, how are you?
Good, thank you.
All right, everybody. So you guys are together on this one. I can see that.
Yep.
All right. So how's everything going over there, guys? How was your day?
Busy.
Awesome.
I hear you. I hear you. I've been super busy myself, so I speak that language fluently. I get it. I get it.
Yep. Did quite a bit of juggling today, but we got here.
Good. That's excellent. All right. So let's get the party started, everybody. Here we go. So last week, Michael, Sandy, what did we cover last week?
Forgiveness.
I love it. What else?
Empathy.
I love it. Okay. So basically the title was, basically, in a nutshell, everybody is hurting, so we kind of identified a bunch of things, that kind of tie into that. So this week is going to be something special, everybody. Like, you're really going to get a lot out of this one here. This one here is titled Eliminating Past Beliefs. So this is huge. Basically, what's taking place here, what I'm talking about, everybody is eliminating past beliefs. If the blended family failure rate is 60 to 80%, a lot of our past beliefs have to go. A lot of our past beliefs are what is going to hinder the family from having any kind of real blended family progress. So that's really big. I'm going to use myself, for a lot of examples today, and talk about how I had to really focus on kind of renewing myself and being a new version of James, so that I was able to take my family and move on to much more greener pastures than basically to what I had been exposed to growing up as a child, what I'd experienced in my teenage years, my young adult years, and of course, now moving into my older adult years. So bullet point number one, as far as past beliefs, the first bullet point, everybody, I'm going to drive it real home. Once again, this is a master course. So we're not, all the things that we're talking about are not little rinky-dink things. These are things that really, we're going to have to drive home and embed in our brains and make some good changes in our train of thought if we're going to move forward as a blended family. Number one, step. Step is an ugly word. Stop using it. Okay? Once again, 60 to 80% of blended families are failing flat out. They're falling flat on their face. Some of our past beliefs have to stop. Step is an ugly word. Step. This is stepson, stepdaughter, stepdad, stepmother, stepbrother. Step creates barriers. It creates division. Step is always going to be a divider. Okay? Now, growing up in my day, one of the biggest things I'll have to give credit to my mother for was we never grew up in our home using the word step. I would never refer to my brothers and sisters as my stepbrother or my stepsister. And to this day, my Christina is still my sister. That is my sister. Daniel and Ray, those are my brothers. The word step never came into play, ever. And I think a big part of that was not only from my mother, not raising us to use that word, but it also came from me being the oldest of us and heavily contributing to raising my brothers and sisters. And I've always looked at them that way, regardless if we had different dads or not. They were always to me, and always will be, my blood brothers and my blood sister, and that is it. There will never be a step, in our family. Now, once again, going back into that family there. Once I had my own blended family, once Veronica came into the picture, the year was 2007. Veronica jumped in there and mothered my two children as if they were her very own right from the gate. I'm very fortunate. I'm very lucky to have met a woman of such that just had that incredible amount of love in her heart, and really did understand that this is the role. Like, this is the role. If I'm going to be with James, this is the role that I'm going to have to play for those children. And she loved them right from the start. We never use that word step anything in our home. In this home, we don't use it. We've never used it. When we introduce ourselves to people, I'm always going to say, hi, this is my wife, Veronica. This is our son Cody. This is our daughter Ashley. This is our son James. There's never been the definition thrown in there or the word. This is my stepmother. This is my stepson. This is no step. No. Okay. Number one, like that's not anybody else's business. Number two, I feel like that's not important at all. Like for us to announce somebody as, hey, like this is this is my stepson. This is my stepdaughter. Think like this, because we've all been there. If you've been in a blended family before, we've been there. For somebody to say that and introduce you as a child and say, this is my stepson Gregory. Little Gregory, looking at this adult, he has no idea who this person is or whoever it is he's being introduced to, cannot help but to feel that barrier slicing right in between, him and that person. Okay? This is my stepson. Okay? One thing that I really did, pride our family on it. I was really proud. Veronica always said that, this is my daughter, this is our daughter Ashley, this is my son Cody. My wife's 7 years younger. Some people would on the spot ask Veronica and say, you look very young, to have those to have those children. She says, those are my husband's children from my previous marriage. Still, we never use the word step. Try that. Don't use it. Step is an ugly word. Step is going to create division. It's going to create barriers. I've seen it on many levels. It saddens me. When I've been coaching youth sports for several years now, since my oldest. You take a look at my trophies back there. Since he was about 7 years old, all the way throughout high school. I've met a lot of parents. I've shook a lot of hands. I'm in a lot of organizations. And when we meet family members and when I see people, when they say, this is my step so-and-so, it's never really a thing where the whole family is smiling and happy to be so step. Never. Once again, it is a divider. It is a barrier. Stop using it. Stop using the word step. Okay? That's really important, everybody. Now, the next bullet point I want to talk about as far as eliminating past beliefs is the way your parents did it doesn't work anymore. Okay? And then I just wrote I wrote something down right next to it that says, hey, basically evolve or dissolve. Once again, 60 to 80% of blended families are failing. Okay? Eliminating past beliefs will have a lot to do with it, okay? It's not going to be all of it, but that's going to be a big chunk of it, okay? The way your parents did it does not work anymore. Now, I will go back to using my parents for an example. There was no technology back then. There was landlines. There was that phone where you did this, 1-714-866, when you wanted to call somebody, okay? They had no technology. They lived a whole new different ball. It was a whole new different ball game. It was the day of the industrial age where our parents understood what hard work was all about. If you had calluses right here on your hands, from lifting heavy things, and you have busted knees, from being down on stock in that bottom shelf, our parents understood what the industrial age was all about. Now that times have changed and we are into the information age, we're well off into the information age. Things have changed. Things are different. I noticed this. I noticed this from the style of parenting that I did when I had my two older children from my previous marriage. I have a 23-year-old. I have a 19-year-old from a previous marriage, and I've got a 6-year-old. He'll be 7 real soon. Things have changed dramatically. The way that our parents did things, some of the things that our parents taught us, they basically are not valid anymore. They're expired. Okay? And that's very important that we understand that. I understand that even as myself as a parent, knowing that some of the things that I had done with Ashley and Cody, they don't work anymore with James. Little James I'm talking about. James is a whole new different animal. It's a whole new different ballgame. He goes to school with a whole new different group of kids, no doubt. I want my son to be a leader. I want my son to be able to speak up for himself. I want him to be able to have that self-esteem and confidence. However, I have to go about doing that in a different manner now. Got to go about parenting and coaching him in a different manner now. Once again, it is a different era from when we grew up. We have to understand that. From our parents, way back in the 50s, 60s, some 70s, and us, I was born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then 2000s. Now here we go with our children, 2019, and moving forward, it is a different time. So once again, the old ways that you were trained to do business, they're not valid anymore. Things that we did when we were 20, we can't basically that style has to change in our 30s, and the style that we had in our 30s, it's got to change now that we're in our 40s. Those ways in our 30s don't work anymore. Most definitely the days of our 20s don't work anymore. Okay, from 40 to 50, obviously yes, I mean, things are dramatically changing. So once again, as far as dealing with the children, I think that's very critical, that we have to adapt to that. I went to a meeting just on Monday night at 8 o'clock at night. I had to meet with the board of directors for Costa Mesa American Little League, and they wanted to screen me. They wanted to know if basically what I'm doing is I'm leaving one organization to go to theirs. They're right in my backyard, and they wanted to see what James Merrifield was all about. And that meeting was very, very informal. Like back in the day, our style of parenting was all about win. And I think I think it's safe to say that your parents taught you that too. Not to say that this day and age winning is not important. I think it's very important for the kids to understand what winning is about. But at the same token, I also think that it's important for them to understand now what losing is about. Okay, you don't get to win every time. You don't. Therefore, your paradigm has to shift. It's got to change. You've got to teach somebody, hey, it feels good to win, but at the same time, you've got to learn. You've got to learn to look for the opportunities based off of your losses. This is how we're going to improve. This is how we're going to. This is how we're going to better ourselves, so that the next time come around, we're going to be better people. We're gonna put on a better performance. You're going to do much better. The team is going to do much more better. I can honestly tell you, I didn't teach those principles back in the day when I was coaching Cody in Junior All-American. I got to tell you that I taught winning was everything. And I got to tell you, the result that I got from that, everybody, was fantastic. Every team that I coached, they won. These kids that you see up here on these, like I said, these are my dad trophies. We went to championships every single year, back to back. Some of these kids I sponsored so that they can go to Division I high schools and Division I colleges. They're there. They're playing for USC. They're playing for UCLA. They're playing in Alabama, because I taught that winning spirit. Now, once again, times have changed. The children, obviously in the homes, they're changed. Times are not the same. I've never ever thought that I would ever have to teach how to be basically teach children how to be graceful losers. Okay, the point that I'm trying to make is that with this generation, I can't just drive that winning philosophy home. And the real big fact of the matter is, parents, we have to realize this, because we know it better than anyone else. We've suffered many defeats in business, in our personal lives. We've suffered many defeats. No doubt, we learn from our failures. Hopefully you learn from your failures, hopefully. Because I think that's really critical. That's key, learning from your failures. But that is how we in our craft ended up becoming success. I've made mistakes as a parent in my first, and a husband in my first marriage. I made mistakes as well in this marriage. And I tell you what, right now, I learned from them. I knew that basically that anytime I repeated that mistake, it was no longer a mistake. It was a choice. So once again, the way our parents did it doesn't work anymore, okay? That's basically the focal point of this bullet point. Evolve or dissolve. We're going to have to learn to evolve, and really work on being tactful engineers with our parenting, work on being tactful engineers, in our relationships with our, husbands and wives, boyfriends and girlfriends that are coming in and meshing as blended families. That's very critical. So the next bullet point that I've got on here, and you're going to like this one, this is actually called being a tactful engineer. Be a tactful engineer, okay? I have to say, I'm probably one of the best tactful engineers that I know. I can blend into any crowd. Doesn't matter what crowd it is, okay? I'm a tactful engineer. Being a tactful engineer means that I can't talk to John the way I talk to Jane, and I can't talk to Jane the way I talk to Ruby. I can't talk to Ruby the way I talk to Jack. I can't talk to Jack the way I talk to Sam. Being a tactful engineer in a blended family is going to be critical, okay? In a blended family, for example, you've got Tommy and you've got Sherry. Tommy's got 2 kids from a previous marriage. Sherry's got 1, okay? Keep in mind, just like I talked about last week, they've both been reading, both families, separate families, have been reading out of different books now for many years now, long before they came together. Okay? Now, this side might not agree with what's going on this side. This side may not agree with what's going on over here. But we've got to learn to be tactful engineers when we talk to each other. Being a tactful engineer means basically taking the time, number one, right? You probably want to write this down if you're taking notes. Listen. Listen. You're going to learn much more from somebody from listening to what they have to say than you getting out there and thinking you know everything. I'm telling you right now, I'm speaking from experience. And being in a position, I've always been in a position of leadership. My whole life, I've been a leader. Like long before careers took off and that sort of thing, long before it, I've always been a leader, and I've always been the guy that was the first to talk. Don't you guys hate? Doesn't everybody hate that guy? Well, that was me. And you know what I tell you, when I really did embrace my role in leadership, somewhat 12, 13 years ago, I really had to learn to be a better listener. And listening really did help me identify, with what were the opportunities. Because in a blended family, you're going to have to be that tactful engineer. You're going to have to know what makes that other side tick. And on this side, you're going to have to know what makes that side tick. You're going to have to know those kids' moods. You're going to have to learn your husband's mood. Those are some of the things that we don't think about, when joining, when basically, bringing a blended family together and now basically moving forward as one. This is part of moving as one. It's really being that tactful engineer. As far as being a tactful engineer, I'll let you in on all my secrets right now. I know my wife's moods. I'm sure just like she knows mine, like the back of my hand. I know what will make her upset. I know what will make her happy. Okay? Now, granted, like sometimes I might not be in the best of moods. I might have had a bad day, out in the streets, everybody. Like, I live a very busy lifestyle. Sometimes things don't always go right, but I know that when I come home and my wife says, hey, baby, how you doing? Like, how was your day? I know that anything that happened out there was it had nothing to do with Veronica, had nothing to do with my wife. And I'm sure to respond back and say, oh, man, and I give that look, and she understands, she gets it that, hey, it was kind of a rough day, and we kind of talk about it just a little bit, but other than that, like I we cannot come home and take that out on her. If anything, if I've had a really rough day, probably one of the absolute very best things that can happen when I walk in that door is I tell my son, my little 6-year-old James, I say, get over here, and he said, and he knows what time it is. He comes to me, he's got this big smile on his face. I say, hey, I need a power hug right now. I need a power hug. I know that power hug right there really meant, for me, it meant all the world. It meant the world to me after having a bad day. But I know that my son, like, really loves that, because this is, like, basically culture in our house. I get the power hug every morning, before we say goodbye. I get the power hug when I walk inside the door. The same thing with Veronica. When I walk in the door, I know what makes her happy. The simplest things that will make my wife happy is just me, putting my arms around her and giving her a kiss and saying hello, and then we have that conversation. Hey, how was your day? Because the communication barriers are always open. Being a tactful engineer. Being a tactful engineer is basically really just learning to master, one another. And like I talked about, what makes the other person happy? What makes the other person angry? You obviously want to stay away from that. Stay away. You don't want to make husbands and wives, boyfriend, girlfriend. You already know, like, you don't want to feel a woman scorn. You just don't. I know I don't. I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to say I'm sorry for anything. So, anyhow, knowing what makes the other person happy in a blended family is going to be real critical. So how do you figure that out? You take the time to listen. Just listen. Just listen. Just observe. And I'm telling you, you learn so much more than if you were out there just talking and talking and talking and thinking that you're going to solve everything overnight. Nothing's going to get fixed overnight. It doesn't work that way. There's always something left to learn. There's always some area of progression, that needs to be done in a blended family. I am like, basically, obviously I've been a husband for a while now, but I got to tell you, like, as far as being a dad, I'm experiencing things all over again on a whole nother different level than I did with the 2 older children from my previous marriage. Okay? Take the time. You really got to take the time to learn. I don't want to, I got to tell you one thing, I'm going to stand my ground on this. Like, I've never ever would want to hear the excuse that, like, we don't have time, our schedules are so busy. Okay? If you're waking up at 4 a.m., to be where you have to be, on the road by 5:30 a.m., getting there at 6:30, your day starting at 7, going home at 5, but not getting home till 8 o'clock at night. That's the schedule. That's what I'm talking about. That's the life I live. That's the life I live. Cody up here, I just got to toot my horn. He was in the car not too long ago, and he says, hey, he's telling his girlfriend Alexis, his longtime girlfriend, that were sophomores in high school, my oldest son will be leaving to Iraq in 2 more weeks to go and defend his country. But he says, Dad, I was just telling Alexis this. This is music to my soul, what I'm going to say right now. I was having a very, very difficult time at that time, and things weren't going very well. And he says, Dad, I was just telling Alexis that my dad worked his ass off. I was just telling Alexis that my dad had to be in LA at 6 o'clock every day. And when he got off of work at 5, he rushed to the football field to be there at 6:30. He says, and we slugged it out until 8:30, 9 o'clock every night. He says, and even better, that was during the regular season. He says, even better in the off season, we didn't take a break. It didn't stop. He says that Dad would come home, same drill. He'd eat something really quick, change his shirt, change his short, get into his shorts and his tennis shoes, and we'd run out to the football field across the street from our house, those schoolyard, and we'd practice until the sun went down and we couldn't see anymore. And we didn't just throw the ball. We didn't just do light drills. No, we worked hard and really grinded it out. And he went on to say that if you want something in life and you want it that bad enough, you're going to have to work day and night to achieve it. The same rule, the same principle applies for a blended family, and I believe that. That is why I got the results that I got with this family, because I put my heart and soul into it. I knew what made people happy. I knew what that kid over there needed. I know what Veronica needs, my wife out there. I know what my daughter needs, Ashley, our oldest. I know what little James needs. So that's part of, basically, once again, being the tactful engineer. You got to be the tactful engineer, and the more that the two of you can stay on the same page, the more successful you're going to be, the greater the example you're going to set for the children of a blended family who are watching you. That same page offense is critical. We created a lesson on that. I want to say that's probably the last lesson of the 6-week master course, and I titled it that, the same page offense. So that's one of the methods to my madness as far as being a tactful engineer, everybody. And the last thing I want to talk about, okay? The last thing of the segment is called the shift of paradigm. You want to write that down. If you don't write that down, remember that word paradigm, because that's huge. That's huge. I'm going to drive this one home, okay? And going back to the title of this series here, which is called Eliminating Past Beliefs. I've spent a lot of time following some of the greats, such as Les Brown. Les Brown endorsed my book, Defying the Odds. And I was just so privileged recently, about maybe 2 weeks ago, to actually meet in person Bob Proctor. Who Bob Proctor is. He's one of the world's greatest motivational speakers, and he also mastered the shift of paradigm. And it wasn't until I got really into the shift of paradigm, I always wondered, what did that word mean? What is it? So finally I looked it up one day. I listened to what he had to say one day, and then it clicked in my brain and said, okay, that's why you are the way you are. That's why you think the way you think. So I really want to help teach that and help you guys understand as far as the paradigm. Once again, eliminating past beliefs. Basically what paradigm means is it's what you've been taught since the day you were born. Okay? And it's basically determining where you are now in your life as a result of the things that were put in here since you were born. Okay? As a little boy, as a young lady, young woman, young girl, I would say, 5 years old, 4 years old, the things that were put inside of here, this is your paradigm. The newspapers that your parents were reading, the TV shows they were watching, the things that they told you, the things that you've seen, the things that made you happy, like the happiest memories that you can never think of. are in there in your paradigm. The biggest traumatic things that ever happened in your life, bad things, we've all had them, bad, that's in your paradigm. Like it scarred you, it's in there. It's not going anywhere. You can see it like as if it were yesterday, okay? The shifting of the paradigm. They're all the experiences that have taken place in our life since we were children. And as we grew up, that is what we know. That is what we believe. Okay? The shifting of paradigm. Basically, paradigm, what that means is that you're basically, your body, you have your body. Okay? Your body's obviously going to do whatever your brain tells it to do, but the paradigm, that's where your belief system kicked in. And all those things that were instilled inside of your brain, you know, some of those things as far as the shifting of paradigm, I think we're all there. And no matter what stage you are in your life right now, you have to let some of those things go in order to let some of the new things into that paradigm in. As I was talking today about step is an ugly word, creating barriers, creating division, I'm giving you a new paradigm. I'm giving you a new set of tools to work with. I guarantee it, for the rest of your life, you will never forget what we talked about today. That's the new paradigm kicking in. The old paradigm. Good Lord. I'm gonna unload on you guys right now. Okay? The old paradigm for James Merrifield. I grew up in poverty. I grew up in an inner city of Los Angeles where death, murder, drugs, violence, both in both the domestic as well as in the streets, those things were just embedded into my brain. So you would think, how sad? Because I think that now, looking back, I think, oh, that's kind of sad. You know, like that really is sad. And when you turn on the news and you'll see something in an inner city, and you'll see, you know, something along the lines of, let's just say, this is the reality. One, what do you call it? Four young teens shot today, you know, by a gang member. Two of them lay dead in the street. Suspect is unknown, still out and about. If you've never been in that kind of environment, you will never understand the mentality behind it. But what I do understand as a youth and growing up in the inner city, no doubt, like I've been gone for a very long time. I don't live that kind of life anymore. But I understood that if he saw his daddy doing that, and if he grew up seeing his brother do that, if he grew up or she and saw those kind of things going on where somebody was shooting up heroin in the restroom in their own home, okay? People coming in and out of the house, strangers to pick up packages, and you kind of had an idea that you knew it was in those packages, there's your paradigm. That's your paradigm. I know it was my paradigm for a long time. Okay? I talked all about that in my book, Define the Odds. I was very open about it because part of writing the book, Define the Odds, was I wanted to let people know that no matter what you've been exposed to, no matter what you've seen in your life, you had a choice. And you could choose to stay there, or you could choose to want better for yourself. You can choose to shift that paradigm. You could choose to, you know, to make life better. But once again, going back to that, that's the paradigm. Things that you saw when you were growing up. So now you think about what you saw growing up. And I guarantee it, everybody's seen it. There were some things where you said, hey, when I get older, I'm not going to let that happen to my wife. Or I'm not going to let that happen to my children. I'm not going to treat my children that way. I know I grew up that way. Saying I would never, ever treat my wife the way my dad treated my mother. I would never beat my mother up. I would never, you know, desert my children like I was deserted. That's something that scarred me. Once again, part of the paradigm, it's in there. That's something that really scarred me for life. And you know, the moral of what it is I'm trying to say as far as paradigm, there are some things that are inside of here that we have to work on daily to kick out in order to allow for new things to move into the paradigm. It took me a long time to learn how to forgive. Okay, I wasn't taught that growing up. No way. Not coming from where I came from. If you did something wrong to one of us, like you were going to pay for it. It took a long time for me to learn to forgive. It took a long time for me to be able to actually pray for my enemies and to pray for people who did things wrong to me. And you know, I got to tell you, that has been one of the most liberating things that I could have ever experienced in all of my life, is letting something go. For somebody to have done something, really bad to me, for somebody to have done something that really hurt me, it was really hard to do that. But once I learned to do it, once I had that shift in paradigm, and I learned to know better that, hey, let it go. Like, that's just, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing I can do about it. All I can do is just basically, hey, I'll say a little prayer for you, and that's it. But I'm going to move on and move forward. Because in order for us to move forward and move on, yes, got to learn to forgive, flat out. And that's really critical. And it took me a long time to learn that. But hey, better late than never. Once again, the shift of paradigm, everybody. That's really, really important, everybody. That watching the things that you put inside of your brain. I did have at one time I can't do that mentality. You can't do it. Because so many people told me that. Even people that I was related to by blood would say, hey, James, you know what? You haven't achieved your goal, of being, a director yet. And it's probably not ever going to happen, James. Why don't you just give up? And that kind of wears on you, man, when people you love tell you stuff like that. Once again, that was a paradigm, man, of things that, somebody told me that. And it wasn't until I really developed a mentality that, you know what? I'm going to prove all of you wrong. I'm going to show you that, yes, I will do many great things on many different levels. I've broken a vicious cycle that plagued my family for many years, and have taken my family to a whole nother level, of greatness. And I'm very proud of that. That will be my legacy when I'm gone. That will be my legacy. That's what people are going to remember me by. Like, how much I love and how much I elevated this family, how much I elevated my community, how much I've helped people that were complete total strangers, how I continue to add value to other people's lives based off my life experience. I want to be that light, and I've been very, very successful in being that person. So paradigm, everybody, that's super important, man. Paradigm. Kick some of that. You're gonna have to, and I'm telling you from experience, I work on this daily. It's not like you can just listen to a couple motivational speakers or do a little bit of reading, every other week when you feel like it. You got to work on these things every day. Blended family principles, we need to work on these things every day, because I'm telling you right now, I never took a day off. I never took a day off for my family. Just like you heard my son Cody, well, you didn't hear him, but you heard my story where he says, hey, my dad worked his ass off. And at the end of his day, no matter how tired he was, came home, grabbed something to buy for a bite real quick, and we ran right out back out the door. He said that we grinded it out. We trained hard. And you don't really think about it like that until someone actually told you, like he did. I just know it meant a lot to him. And for me, it really did mean the world to me to be that person in his life, that could have gave him that environment. I'm very proud of him. Anyhow, like I said, Cody be heading off to Iraq for about 9 months and a couple of weeks. Very proud of my son. I am not worried at all. I didn't teach my son to live in fear, and yeah, it'll be a great experience. Don't worry, everybody. He'll be safe. He's hanging out in some fancy Air Force base with the Air Force, and his mission's not all commando. But anyhow, everybody, I hope you got something out of this segment. I'm really happy, to teach it, everybody. Got some really good things coming up in the pipeline, on a whole another level for blended family practices and principles and courses and whatnot. I've been working with some high caliber people, to really enhance the experience as well too. But anyhow, I'm very happy to teach it, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you got something out of this. I'm very glad to spend the time with you doing this. And once again, everybody, hey, stay blessed and keep working hard on building your dream family legacy. Have a good night. Thank you.